And this is the Genesis Science Report. I'm David Rives, and tonight we will have a captivating discussion with a biology expert as we examine a recent study's controversial claims about gene duplication in a creature 700 million years ago, supposedly, laying the groundwork for complex life. Now, I will also answer viewer questions about the scientific implications of Adam and Eve being humanity's sole genetic ancestors. But first, in a time of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. This quote from George Orwell is so appropriate for the elaborate scheme that has been put into place to keep us from understanding or accessing not just information, but truth itself. In this episode of GSR, we dive into the layers of deceit that have been woven in the name of truth. Now, it will likely shock you and disturb you. What is this elaborate scheme, you may ask? Well, if you've gone to college, or even if you haven't, you've probably heard someone say things along these lines. Well, you can always trust information in peer-reviewed journals. You can take that information as gospel truth. It's peer-reviewed. It's been scrutinized. It's gone through a rigorous process of research, the scientific method, and a community of experts has deemed that it is worthy to be published. So you can truly put your trust in this information. Or can you? The fact that peer-reviewed journals are the gold standard of truth in academia and universities is a broadly accepted and understood fact. This is the mantra that is pounded into the heads of students that seek higher education. And not just here in the United States, this is respected the world over. Now, before we go on, it is important to note that there are many incredible researchers and that many peer-reviewed articles are worthy of time and attention. This is by no means stating that we can't derive helpful or even essential types of information from these academic sources. But at the same time, it is important to note that many aspects of this system are beginning to unravel. Because when you look at the way in which peer-reviewed articles are obtained objectively, there are natural biases that arise for the researchers and the groups that publish these articles. So here are a few questions that you could ask from the start. Who would be sponsoring the project? What are the commercial or political ties to the researchers? And what ideological motivations are attached to those that are publishing their research? Now, if we're really going to approach these topics with critical thinking, these are all rudimentary questions to ask. But another way to sum it up would be follow the money. After the whole scenario with the recent pandemic, it is all the more necessary that we ask these questions with some urgency. But here's a perfect example of what this academic fraud can look like. Dr. Anthony J., the author of Estrogeneration, How Estrogenics Are Making You Fat, Sick, and Infertile, was recently interviewed on The Joe Cohen Show. Now, one of the topics they discussed was in regards to how research does or does not get funded. Dr. J specifically spoke about one of his areas of expertise, environmental toxins, specifically BPAs. Now, surely we have accurate information based on peer-reviewed studies when it comes to the toxic things that we or our children may be exposed to through food, the water supply, and common household products. I mean, no one would stop that information from being made easily available, right? Wrong. Dr. J asserted this. You often can't rely on research studies to give you accurate information about environmental toxins or what their health effects might be. Corporations have been able to influence study results and thus EPA regulations by being the main supporters of research in this field. In order for these corporations to thrive, they need studies to show safe and positive results for their products. However, these studies become biased because it costs money to perform research, and big corporations are a whole lot more willing to back research that provides favorable outcomes for them. This leads to misleading and contradictory information being presented to the public. So this explanation that he provides is extremely different from what the academic establishment is purporting as the gold standard, isn't it? But we feel that we must confront the blatant hypocrisy being demonstrated by the academic establishment. They've staked their reputation on a bulletproof way of finding the real truth, or the facts is what they call it. Well, when you begin to pull on this thread, the great unraveling begins. Because if they're lying, or at least purposely holding back specific truths about these types of issues, well, it only begs the question, what else are they lying about? And while I don't want to just focus on the past, this does remind me of the pandemic and a quote from George Orwell. In Orwell's famous book, 1984, he envisioned a time in which telling the truth would be a revolutionary act. Do we now live in the time of which Orwell spoke? I mean, not so long ago, during the pandemic, it seemed that the First Amendment was completely suspended. Speech was censored across many platforms. National figures were silenced. People lost their jobs if they chose to speak up, and those that didn't follow a very particular narrative, they were ostracized. But censorship and controls of information have never controlled truth speakers in the past. We have an incredible history of those that have stood up and spoken the truth to power in every generation. Examples like Martin Luther, William Tyndale, especially Jesus of Nazareth. He was not afraid of igniting controversy, and he spoke the greatest truth of all time. But just as the Word of God could not be bound, the truth, it can't be hidden forever. We can spend our days seeking truth through the means that man provides, but we can never really enter truth until we embrace what God has told us in His holy Word, the Bible. This alone is where we find the everlasting truth. There's a reason that Yeshua of Nazareth, Jesus Christ, is called not only the way, but the truth and the life. And no matter how dark it can seem, truth will prevail. So go ahead, be skeptical. We've seen the bias of the media, we've seen the bias of academia, and we've seen the agenda of the scientists. Let's get back to real science, real knowledge, and real truth. When we return to the Genesis Science Report, I will be answering your questions about the genetic origins of humanity, so stay tuned. Just outside Nashville, the Wonder Center and Science Museum, with a top 10 planetarium, kids' hands-on activities, the teen favorite 1 million volt musical Tesla show. It's worlds of fun for the entire family. Experience the wonder. Explore the science. Inspire curiosity. Embark on adventure. The Wonder Center and Science Museum. I want to thank you for supporting GSN this year. Your support is helping us send this broadcast to millions of households around the globe. You know, in a society where the theories of Darwinian evolution are bombarding our youth via schools and universities and through peer pressure, we need to saturate the airwaves with the truth of real biblical science, and you are making this happen. Your one-time, monthly, or generous end-of-year tax-deductible love gift keeps this network streaming 24/7 at no cost to our viewers. Thank you for your support. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God. Is there such a thing as a sure proof that God is real, that creation is true, and that we can believe the Bible?
We have a fixed amount of energy and matter in this universe. But if the universe had a beginning, naturally, everything had to have come from nothing.
Wow.
Which is the most immense violation of the first law that you could imagine.
On Wonders Without Number. Tune in to the Genesis Science Network Knowledge Block as you learn real, cutting-edge science, not evolutionary theories and agendas. Whether you're in junior or senior high, a homeschooler, or an adult looking for higher education, we bring you a fresh perspective each weekday. Our goal is to equip you with another block to build and strengthen your faith, giving you solid evidence. Join us each weekday at 11 a.m. Central. And this question comes from @Leah K on YouTube. Leah asks, am I supposed to believe that Adam and Eve, who only had 2 sons, are our sole genetic ancestors? There must be an obvious explanation that I'm unaware of. Please illuminate me. Leah, thank you so much for that question. Actually, that has a number of assumptions built in, and what we're finding is that many times this is something that has been perpetuated by skeptics, by atheists, and they say, well, you know, it actually takes a male and a female to generate offspring to keep the population going. Well, now even that is coming under question, but the whole point is they're missing many important facts and overlooking the fact that the scriptures tell us that Adam and Eve had many sons and daughters. So if you think about this, well, Adam and Eve were the first two. Male and female, God created them. Those first two had sons and daughters, and those sons and daughters actually did mate together. So basically this is incest. But guess what? Incest wasn't condemned until later, as soon as population had increased to the point that it could sustain itself, right? So when you think about it, what is the problem with incest? Well, one of the major problems would be genetic consequences. And when you think back, well, Adam and Eve, everything was very good. They would have been perfect. They wouldn't have had these genetic mutations. They would have had a 100% pure DNA code, and so would their offspring. All after the fall, all of a sudden you would have had small insertions of mutations, small changes in the DNA would have begun to occur, and of course, genetic entropy. But at the same time, for generations after generations from the beginning, you were starting with an extremely pure code. So that would have kept those incestual or interbreeding problems down. And by the time the population had built up, then all of a sudden, God gives the Israelites the command, don't marry your kin. So, at the appropriate time in Earth's history, God gave us the answer to that as well. The fact of the matter is, we find that Adam and Eve had multiple sons and daughters, and therefore, this is actually a non-issue. It's a problem that has been created by skeptics and atheists to try to make you skeptical of God's Word. And this featured resource is something for fans of Ancestry.com, 23andMe. Those who trace their ancestors' genealogy will absolutely love this. So if you want to learn more about the topic of genetics, DNA, and human history, pick up a copy of Traced: Human DNA's Big Surprise, written by Dr. Nathaniel Jeanson, a Harvard graduate with a PhD in cell and developmental biology. This book provides insight into the hidden DNA-based family tree of humanity. Through meticulous research, Dr. Jeanson uncovers the genealogical links between ancient civilizations and modern people, fundamentally reshaping our understanding of race, human history, and the age of the Earth. Traced explores the genetics of minority groups, connecting them back to their specific ancestors in Genesis 10, and one of the most compelling aspects of Traced is its argument for the recent origin of humanity, presenting a pretty strong case for a young Earth perspective. This aspect of the book puts biblical authority on the offense, providing a robust response to secular scientific claims. You can pick up your copy at the Creation Superstore by visiting creationsuperstore.com or calling 931-212-7990. Can you do me a favor? Tell your friends and your neighbors about GSN. Remember, it airs 24/7 and is completely free to watch. We're available on Roku, Fire TV, online, and on mobile devices and tablets. Just give them the website address, GenesisScienceNetwork.com. Spread the word, share the truth. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God. Hi, I'm David Rives, and I'm inviting you to visit the Creation Superstore, the largest Origins-related store in the world. Not only will you find every book and video title on creation versus evolution, science, but also every resource that teaches us about our origin and how it all takes us back to Genesis, a grand designer, the God of the Bible, and ultimately, yes, the gospel message. Documentaries your family can trust, fossils, teaching videos, children's books, church Bible studies, homeschool supplements, and expert scientific literature. If you can't find a title, call us up and we'll add it. Normally, you'd have to visit dozens of sites to gain access to all of the titles that are out there, and then you would be at a loss to whether the book or video was worth the purchase. But not here. We've curated the best of the best into top 10 lists. And on some of my favorite products, you'll find the Rives rating, where I help guide you on the best resources available for not only those who love history, biblical studies, and creation science, but also great products at the layman level, easy to understand for those who are learning or want their children and grandchildren to be exposed to a biblical worldview. Just look for the Rives rating to find my personal favorites. Use the search bar to look up a topic or follow our menu to sort by ministry, subject, or author. Give us a call at 931-212-7990 as you're browsing. We have ministry volunteers who will do their best to assist you at all hours of the day and even help you place your order. Yes, a real person. Get ready for a secure shopping experience brought to you by the leaders of creation-based research. Your purchase goes towards ministry outreach and also supports the authors and organizations who publish the material, most of whom are personal friends and colleagues of mine. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God. Our first testimonial is from Barbara, who says, "My husband and I watch Genesis Science Network, or DVDs, or David Rives on the computer almost every day. We've learned so much about creation science. We share some of our knowledge and some of the resources we get from the Creation Superstore with our grown children and grandchildren. This ministry is so uplifting. Glory to God." She said, "I've had some hesitation to speak out about the fallacies of evolution because I didn't feel equipped for the refutation from some of my scientifically savvy children, but David Rives' ministry has helped me gain confidence." Barbara. Thank you so much, Barbara, for that. That is the whole mission that we have with whether it's the Wonder Center and Science Museum, whether it's Genesis Science Network, which many of you are watching on right now, whether it is our social media, our TikTok channels, the Wonders Without Number TV shows. All of these resources, including the Creation Superstore, all of them are to equip you so that you can become more effective witnesses for Christ. Oftentimes we're simply missing those really easy nuggets that we can use when we're witnessing to our friends, our co-workers, our classmates, right? That family member who comes over at Thanksgiving and is a bit cynical, a bit skeptical about things. So thank you so much for your support, and we love hearing from you on that. And lastly, from Angela, we went to the Creation Science Center for the first time on Monday and absolutely loved it. For being brand new, they've really done an amazing job. I love how interactive each room is for people of all ages. Our favorite experience was the planetarium show and the Tesla coils. Words can't describe how great it is. You really have to see it to know. Angela. Thanks, Angela. We are actually in studio right here at the Wonder Center and Science Museum. The TV studios are on site with the rest of the museum and facilities. We've had children and families and groups of people walking past all morning long. I've been staring at them out of the window, and better yet, they've been staring in and been able to take just a little glimpse at some of the filming that we do. But you mentioned the Tesla coils. Listen, that's one of my favorite as well. 1 million volt dual musical Tesla coils that actually we pulse to frequencies so that it plays a song. It is an experience unlike any other museum around the world, and we appreciate you sending in that comment. As always, please keep sharing with us how our outreaches are impacting your life every day, and sort of this encouragement. It really means a lot to us. And that brings me to this week's ministry update. Here at the Wonder Center, our new Wonders of Geology exhibit has quickly become a visitor favorite. If you haven't explored it yet, now is the perfect time to do so. The exhibit boasts an impressive collection of geological treasures. You're going to encounter beautiful igneous, metamorphic, sedimentary rocks, alongside a dazzling array of gemstones and minerals that highlight the incredible beauty of our planet. Now, one of our star attractions is the mesmerizing augmented reality sandpit. Now here you can sculpt your own geological landscapes right before your eyes. It's a joy for kids and adults alike to see topographical features come to life with their creativity. Design requires a designer, it turns out. The Wonders of Geology exhibit is perfect for curious learners, science enthusiasts, or anyone looking for a fun and educational experience designed to leave you fascinated and inspired by the beauty of God's creation. And now, before we jump into our discussion with Dr. Bergman, let's take a moment to marvel at the wonders of DNA and explore how an information language system points to the fact that we are intelligently designed. Let's take a look right now. Let's imagine that you're walking along a lakeshore and you find this smooth rock with strange figures carved into it. Well, would you automatically assume that the motion of the waves had randomly eroded the figures? Or would you attribute it to the work of an intelligent author? You see, even if we can't read what it says, we recognize language when we see it, and we know that language always requires a mind. Well, DNA, the double helix in the nucleus of nearly every cell in your body, that's a language system. It's composed of just 4 letters called nucleotides, which can create different chemicals known as amino acids. And you see, these amino acids are the building blocks of 100,000 proteins that our human body needs. Every living thing, from frogs to birds to human beings, contain a unique DNA code with instructions on how to build that organism. So you see, deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA, is a highly complex language system. It's far more complex than any computer or human language system. Now, Dr. Werner Gett once calculated that a pinhead full of DNA contains enough information to fill a stack of books stretching from the Earth to the Moon 500 times. Now, creating an information language system is complex enough, but then you have to be able to read and understand it too. So I could have an instruction manual in Mandarin Chinese, but it's not going to do me any good unless I can read and understand Mandarin. Thankfully, your body can both create and read the DNA language system. So language never comes about by chance. Information always comes from either already existing information or a mind. So where did the amazing information contained in every strand of DNA come from? Well, evolution would tell you that it's the result of chance processes over millions of years. But can random time and chance produce a language system and also know how to read and understand it? I mean, I don't care how many millions of years you give it. The information in our DNA came from the mind of the Creator, Yahweh of the Bible. Now, Genesis tells us that in the beginning, God created. So just like a pebble with letters carved into it points to an author who carved these symbols, well, the complex language of DNA bears the fingerprint of the Creator, not the hallmark of eons of chance. I want you to remember, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God. And tonight we're diving deep into the intriguing world of evolutionary biology, but from a perspective that you won't hear often in mainstream circles. The focus? A recent study titled Unveiling the Dawn of Complex Life, how a simple creature set the stage for human evolution. Now, secular researchers from the Center for Genomic Regulation claim that a simple creature living a staggering 700 million years ago is responsible for everything from octopus camouflage to human cognition. We're going to examine this study through a different lens, a biblical perspective. And joining us today is Dr. Jerry Bergman, a distinguished biologist and educator with over 25 years of experience teaching and an impressive portfolio, over 800 publications and over 60 books. It's always an honor to have you on the show, Dr. Bergman.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Well, it is so great to have you on Genesis Science Report. Listen, this article claims that a simple organism from 700 million years ago laid the foundation for all complex life. That's a pretty bold statement. What are the main scientific challenges to these long evolutionary timeframes?
Well, the main challenge would be number one, we know a lot about genetic mutations. I worked in that field, worked in cancer research. We know an awful lot about genetic mutations. And what happens is the estimates vary, but nonetheless, you're talking about 100 to 200 new mutations every generation. And so if you're talking about 700 million years ago, you're talking about what they call genetic catastrophe. In other words, the mutations are going to kill the organism and eventually the species.
Wow. Well, gene duplication events are highlighted as a key factor in evolutionary innovation. Can you explain the potential flaws in this theory and how likely are beneficial mutations in such scenarios?
Well, the problem with genetic duplication is the theory is number one, genes duplicate, so you have two genes. One can continue to do the function of that gene. The other can evolve to do something else. But the problem is when you have duplication, number one, you're going to have mutations in both genes likely. You're going to have problems in both genes. And we also know that duplication causes disease. The best known example is Huntington's disease, which is a disease which results from genetic mutations and duplications. And so therefore, and there are other diseases as well, but that's one of the main ones that's well publicized. And so when you have duplication, and it does happen, of course, but it does cause a problem, and it's not rational to assume that one gene will do fine, produce whatever it's supposed to produce. The duplicated gene will mutate and do something else. It's a story, but it's problematic.
Problematic at best, exactly. Well, the researchers, they label certain modern insects like mayflies, they call them living fossils, meaning that even though they're purported to be millions of years old, they show practically no change within the fossil record to today. But what does that imply about the validity of evolutionary theory as a whole versus a biblical explanation of created design?
Well, it's a problem because not only a genetic mutation problem, but it's also a problem because the theory is that, well, actually the article talked about some other organism, but I learned in school and when I taught this, that indeed we all animals evolved from sponges. And so therefore they've changed the theory quite a bit. But the problem is we have sponges which evolved into all reptiles, amphibians, etc. The problem is mainly that is a problem because as they evolve, you have a lot of changes, but in essence, we all came from sponges. And in essence, well, the best example is the idea that we evolved from worms. Well, that's fine, but some worms has not evolved in the past, 700 million years. Other worms have evolved into people, and recently they found a worm that evolved human-type eyes, the camera-type eyes. And so it's a funny-looking creature. It's a marine creature, but it's a worm, and it's got these eyes sticking out of its head, which in essence they claim from the research they've done, that these are very human-type eyes. So why would one worm stay a worm for 700 million years, another worm evolve into people, and another worm evolve into interesting organisms with very human-type eyes?
Just put some magical duct tape, call it stasis, call it what you will. There's always some sort of way to rescue it, and yet at the same time, it doesn't make logical sense. If we're actually thinking outside the box, if we're logically processing things, this doesn't work. Now, the study suggests that some of the genes that are found could be traced back to an ancient ancestor. Instead of common ancestry, isn't it more likely common design is a factor here? I mean, how do you explain genetic similarities across species without a common ancestor?
Well, you explain genetic similarities because all life has certain requirements.
Okay.
And those certain requirements mean that they have to have certain genes that will meet these requirements. For example, to take in oxygen in the body, to process food, etc. And therefore, you're going to find similarities. It's like in mechanical area, we find nuts and bolts and washers are commonly used. They're commonly used in simple computers as well as large earth-moving machines. So we find a lot of commonality because those systems, in this case, the nuts and bolts, work well. And you find a lot of commonality in all life because certain genes work well. If you think about it, we have to do many of the same things that bacteria, that insects, etc. have to do. And so therefore, you're going to find similarities in all life because of that similar requirements to survive in the environment that we see around us.
Makes perfect sense. In fact, the piece uses metaphors like recipes and libraries to describe evolutionary processes, but to me that sounds like complexly, intelligently created mechanisms, and I think that that is a huge factor that is overlooked. Dr. Bergman, thank you so much for addressing some of these things, because we see these types of articles pop up on science websites all of the time. We see them pop up on National Geographic and Discovery as if it's something revolutionary, but in fact, what it's pointing back to are complex design features that are best explained with a biblical worldview. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Bergman.
Thank you very much.
Coming up on the Genesis Science Report, I'll be joined by Dr. Carl Werner to discuss the astonishing similarities between ancient fossils and modern animals and plants, and delve into what these living fossils could signify for the ongoing debate between creation and evolution. Friends of Genesis Science Network, we started this channel to make an impact in the lives of both Christians and inquiring skeptics around the world. It has done that in unbelievable ways. Now, one of our viewers wrote, "I've been watching your channel for nearly a week now, and I would like you to know the blessing that it's been to me. I've never had the finances or the opportunity to attend a university, but I've been a believer for the last 37 years. Your channel has done more for my understanding of my faith than any book I've read save the Bible, and I feel like I'm finally able to attend the lecture classes I've always wanted to. Thank you so much for your ministry." I want to thank you for your generous support. GSN is no simple project and requires monthly commitments to keep it on the air. Please consider becoming a partner with us today. Just call 931-212-7990 or click Give on our website. We are making a difference. I'm David Rives, and you're watching the Genesis Science Network. Today we can just pick up our cell phone and call somebody across the world. Long before this, there were long-distance communications that have happened throughout history.
And you could see dozens of ships coming in that don't belong there. Light up that fire so that that can be seen miles away. If you're going to be defending against attackers, it's got to be able to pass the warning in a short amount of time.
On wonders without number. And it's that time again. That's right, the Kids Corner. This week we're exploring trilobites. Now, trilobites were deep sea creatures living on the bottom of the oceans, and they're found in an amazing number of designs. More than 25,000 varieties have been discovered so far. Now, some have an impressive array of spines and protrusions, and a lot that we find are quite small, less than 1/4 of an inch. But some were giants, more than 18 inches long. Now, despite their amazing variety of advanced design features and huge numbers, trilobites are now extinct. The fossils of trilobites are found in some of the very lowest rock layers, meaning that they were probably thriving in the pre-flood seas, but then covered over with mud and sediment as the fountains of the Great Deep burst open. Now, they have incredibly beautiful and complex design features, including multiple pairs of articulated legs, gills, feelers, and a series of body segments. Now, these segments are really flexible with some species. Guys, check this out. They're actually able to completely roll into a ball to protect their underside when in danger. Now, maybe my favorite feature is the advanced eye structures, which are multifaceted compound eyes, kind of like we see in honeybees or flies. You can actually see that there. Now, they left little squiggly trails in the rock. Those are called ichnofossils. And last time I was at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, I came across an amazing Trilobite trail that further excited me, and it reminded me that God has made an abundance of unique creatures on this earth. Let's dismantle moral relativism. Listen to this quote by the character Arthur Fleck in the 2019 hit movie, The Joker.
All of you, the system that knows so much, you decide what's right or wrong the same way that you decide what's funny or not.
There are no gods, no nations, no money, and no human rights except in our imagination. This is another quote. But you see, here's the problem. The first quote is fiction, but the second quote is from a real person, or a real joker, we should say. In other words, this isn't being said by a supervillain in a comic book. No, there are real-life ideas being pushed by an influential man by the name of Yuval Noah Harari. Now, you may not have yet heard this name, but we want to make him a little more famous because of how profoundly poisonous and damaging his perspectives are. And all the more disturbing, he's quickly becoming a preeminent voice to global elites at their gatherings. Ideas have consequences, and bad ideas have bad consequences. So let's start by delving into Harari's provocative assertions about artificial intelligence, faith, and moral relativity, and then we'll look at a rebuttal. You see, Harari has stirred a tempest by challenging the truths of Christianity in the age of AI, suggesting that the rise of artificial intelligence undermines faith. His analysis of humanity's past and future posits that as AI progresses, it will eventually surpass human intelligence, potentially rendering our species obsolete. Now, these aren't exactly original ideas. I mean, humanists and atheists since Voltaire have been putting God in their crosshairs. The iconic 1968 cover of Time magazine asked, "Is God dead?" But with the rise of artificial intelligence, Harari is recycling these ideas now with a force. He argues that AI-driven algorithms, devoid of human biases and fallibilities, could undermine the very foundation of belief in the authority of Scripture and an almighty God. You see, in his view, the concept of an omniscient, omnipotent God becomes silly in a world where algorithms can predict human behavior and where these machines possess incredible capabilities. Now, some, especially amongst the world elites, are applauding his audacity, but we condemn his views as blasphemous and dangerous. What about this quote from his book, A Brief History of Humankind? Quote, "As far as we can tell from a purely scientific viewpoint, human life has absolutely no meaning. Humans are the outcome of blind evolutionary processes that operate without goal and without purpose. Our actions are not part of some divine cosmic plan, and if planet Earth were to blow up tomorrow morning, the universe would probably keep going about its business as usual. As far as we can tell at this point, human subjectivity would not be missed. Hence, any meaning that people inscribe to their lives is just a delusion." You see, this is the slippery slope of moral relativism. We lose our fear of God. Life loses its value. And that is the exact slippery slope in which tens of millions were killed in China during the Cultural Revolution and in Stalin's Russia. These are the amoral assertions that have historically led to genocide and all kinds of other evil. But this time, you see, the regimes that Harari is seeking to empower will be ones that have the power of AI behind them. Now, that's a pretty grim prospect and one that we must fight against. You see, as Christians, we want to emphasize the inherent dignity of humanity, rooted in the belief that humans are created in the image of God, the foundational truth of Imago Dei. While certain AI, it exhibits impressive cognitive abilities, it really lacks the spiritual essence and the moral agency that defines human existence, us. You see, even as AI advances, it can never replace the unique relationship we have with one another and our families. nor can it replace the relationship we have with God. Harari said, whatever is possible is by definition also natural. Wow. He said a truly unnatural behavior, one that goes against the laws of nature, simply cannot exist. Do you hear where this is going? Clearly, Harari's moral compass is completely broken. In other words, nothing is against the law because we're just the mere output of billions of years of evolutionary behavior and chance. Truly, with Darwinian theory, there is no foundational truth to resist these murderous thoughts. Harari himself makes that case here. He said, Voltaire said about God that there is no God, but don't tell that to my servant, lest he murder me at night. Homo sapiens have no natural rights, just as spiders, hyenas, and chimpanzees have no natural rights. But don't tell that to our servants, lest they murder us at night. So Harari is wanting to establish an alternative morality, apart from the foundation of Scripture, in which the elites get to tell us what is right or wrong based on their whim, and with the powers of state surveillance and artificial intelligence at their disposal. That's pretty dangerous. Harari would tell us to use the foundation of a superintelligent, supposedly godlike AI to understand reality and truth. But we would argue that there are absolute morals present in the Bible that should never be broken. Things like the Golden Rule, don't murder, don't commit adultery. You know, horrible everyday burdens like don't lie, don't take other people's stuff. Absolute morality that, if it's broken, it sees society start a decline into a dark, dark reality. To close, one more thought from the Joker. Yuval Harari. He said, in order to change an existing imagined order, we must first believe in an alternative imagined order. An alternative imagined order is what he proposes. But I think we have to boldly state without apology that an order apart from loving, kind, generous God that we find in the Bible is not any kind of order at all. It's total disorder. It's total chaos. You see, the so-called order that Harari suggests leads to hellish behavior, leading to an eternal separation from all that is good, which we can say is a darker dystopian reality than even the Joker could have imagined. We don't have to experience that if we put our trust in Jesus Christ. Listen to the order that God has proposed. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. That is a truth worth believing.
Join us at the Wonder Center and Science Museum for this month's Unwrapped event, where we feature expert speakers presenting scientific and biblical discoveries.
It pays to learn history, folks.
We cannot create an aircraft even close to what these birds can do.
This changes the way we do biology.
Discounted tickets are available for an after-hours adventure, including museum admission with kids' hands-on activities, a planetarium movie, Tesla experience, and pre-show entertainment. Perfect for the whole family.
What you believe about the history of the world is going to affect the way that you study the world today.
You see a mathematical order here. You see the orthogonal lines. You see the repeating patterns.
You don't understand what it takes to make a cell. That's serious engineering.
Come be inspired as you learn. The evening presentation is free, but seating is extremely limited, so RSVP immediately at wondercenter.org.
Living fossils, as the name implies, are fossils that look similar to animals living today, such as fossil starfish, or you could say a fossil tortoise. They're found in all of the rock layers of the world, these sedimentary layers like Cambrian layers, Jurassic layers, Miocene layers. Well, Dr. Carl Werner is an expert on this topic. He actually wrote a book and a video series entitled Living Fossils. Dr. Werner, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David, and it's great to be with you and your audience.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you being on. Dr. Werner, are the living fossils that we find in the rock layers of the world different species than modern animals and plants? Does that imply evolution? Or are they the same animal, implying creation and the flood?
Well, David, if you put a picture of a so-called living fossil next to a modern animal, side by side, they look the same. For example, look at this fossil nautilus on the bottom left of your screen, which was found in a dinosaur rock layer. And this modern nautilus shell, which is above it on the left on your screen, they look essentially the same. Now, if you cut the fossil nautilus in half and place it next to a living nautilus shellfish that has been cut in half, they look identical, implying that the nautilus did not evolve. Now look at the inside of the fossil and the living nautilus shell. The siphuncle tube, which connects the chambers, looks the same, and the shape of the chambers look the same. But evolution scientists changed the genus and species names of the fossil nautilus to create the illusion of evolution. Look, the modern nautilus species is called Nautilus pompilius, but the evolution scientists named the fossil nautilus Cenoceros lineatus. You see, David, they look like the same animal, but are given different species names to suggest they are not.
They do look remarkably similar. Dr. Werner, what other examples do you have of scientists that have changed those scientific names, the taxonomic names, to create this illusion of evolution?
Well, actually, David, my whole book, Living Fossils, is filled with similar examples of scientists changing the scientific names to create the illusion of evolution. For example, look at this fossil sequoia branch. It was found in a dinosaur rock layer, and it looks exactly like the modern sequoia branch, but again, the scientists changed the species names of the fossil. The fossil is called Cuneata, but the species of the living sequoia is called Glyptostroboides.
Okay.
Again, evolution scientists have done this to create the illusion of evolution, but the names are the illusion. These plants and these animals from the dinosaur times have not changed. They're the same animals.
You know, I'm proud to say that at the Wonder Center and Science Museum, where we're filming this, we actually have, I think it's at least 16 examples of living fossils, many of which are featured in your book, on display with the fossils and the living counterparts side by side so that students get this idea in their head. What other modern animals have been found with dinosaurs? I know there's been so much mixed together.
Yeah, in my book and video series, Living Fossils, we have interviews with evolution scientists who describe, believe it or not, finding parrots fossils with dinosaurs, parrots, and also other modern birds like ducks and loons and owls and penguins. They've all been found with the dinosaurs. Besides modern birds, they have modern reptiles have been found in the dinosaur rock layers like boa constrictors, iguanas, box turtles, alligators, crocodiles, and also modern amphibians like the salamanders and frogs have been found with dinosaurs. And mammals have been found with dinosaurs such as possums, hedgehogs, duck-billed platypus, echidnas, shrews, beaver-like mammals, Tasmanian devil-like mammals, squirrel-like mammals, etc. And then modern fish have also been found in the dinosaur rock layers like salmon, sardines, herring, orange roughy, etc. Plus, there's representatives of all the invertebrate groups living today, such as crayfish, lobster, shrimp, insects, oysters. But all of this information that modern animals live with dinosaurs has been kept hidden from the public.
Yes, it has. It has absolutely been concealed because all of these things blended together point back to the biblical historical narrative of Noah's flood. Now, you can order Carl's books, videos, and other resources at creationsuperstore.com, and I'd invite you to find out a lot more about his work at thegrandexperiment.com. Thank you, Carl, for being on. Now, coming up on GSR, I will be joined by a former systems administrator for NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, David Coppage, as we look at an intriguing phenomenon surrounding Jupiter's moon, Io, and discuss how it impacts our understanding of the cosmos. So stick around, because we'll be right back. We know that you want to have a deep faith in the Lord and to witness to those around you. To do that, you need tools and information to strengthen your faith using scientific discoveries that prove the Bible to be true. The problem is that atheists using evolutionary theories claim that they've refuted the Bible's accuracy. What's worse, the real facts are censored. If you don't have a PhD in science, you're often left feeling helpless when trying to defend your faith. But you need to be equipped to know the truth. For that reason, over the past 13 years, we've become the most trusted name in biblical scientific research, interfacing with nearly every top Christian organization in existence to distill and give you the true facts as they support your faith in Christ. Sign up for our weekly emails and free bi-monthly magazine. Consider becoming a partner with us as we reach the world with the truth of the Bible and the gospel message. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God. The birds of the air, they were created by God in the beginning, but they are so diverse right now. He is being handed this magnificent creature.
This bird is designed. He is chock full of design. This doesn't just happen. He'll fly over your head and he'll land and you can't hear a thing.
Is that right?
It's incredible. God thought of everything when He made them.
Today on Wonders Without Number. And today I'm joined by David Coppage, an astrophysicist and seasoned informational technology specialist with 14 years of experience working for the Cassini mission to Saturn at NASA's JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory. During his time as the systems administrator for the mission, he oversaw the crucial task of managing the communication systems for the Cassini spacecraft. David, it's an honor to have you on the show.
It's great to be here, David.
Listen, we have heard about some of the things that you've done, but you've had quite this fascinating career that led up to the point that you're at right now. First, tell me a little bit about your work with JPL and the Cassini mission.
Oh, that was a great honor to be a part of the largest outer planet mission ever launched. And the Cassini spacecraft, as big as a school bus, was loaded for bear with all kinds of instruments. And we had a fantastic time, 13-year mission, and I was there for 14 years from launch until the second extended mission.
Wow. Around that same time, you were doing all of this scientific work with a scientific organization, and you know, as time progressed, there came a point where your belief in the idea that there is a creator kind of got into the way. Can you briefly talk about that for a second?
Yes, I had a good reputation there. I was a team lead of the system administrators in charge of most of the computers for the mission. And but I had this bad habit once in a while of sharing Illustra Media videos on DVD with coworkers. And, you know, it's just occasionally, not with people I knew. Yeah. But I gave out one too many, and this lady complained that she felt harassed by my religious views, even though it was just intelligent design. And that led to, that was a domino that started me getting fired.
I'm telling you what, there really is suppression of truth simply because of views that have nothing to do with doing real scientific study. In fact, people with your belief system have done some of the best science in history. So I do applaud you for standing firm. It must have been incredible to witness the spacecraft passing Jupiter in 2000, and then the Cassini mission, it passed Jupiter's moon, Io, in 2001, I think it was. For viewers at home who might not be familiar with it, can you explain what makes this moon so unique?
Io is the most volcanically active body in the solar system. And yes, we got a picture of it on the way by Jupiter, but now greater pictures have come from the Juno spacecraft, and so we know a lot about Io.
That's beautiful. Now, Juno spacecraft has conducted about 2 more flybys of Io, and we have some pictures. They're really stunning that came from that mission. But David, could you just discuss the data collected during those flybys and explain the implications of those findings for us?
Yes, we got great pictures from Galileo in the late 90s and early 2000s. And what they found is that there are 400 volcanoes on this moon. I mean, far more than even on the Earth. And there's so much energy coming out of this little moon that it's equal to like 5 times all the heat output of Yellowstone coming out of this moon, which is about the size of our moon.
Interesting. Tell me, what are the implications for creation based on the new discoveries? Why does it point towards biblical creation and not towards the evolutionary perspective of random stellar evolution?
Well, there's 2 problems here. The problem is the amount of heat, and typically they say it comes from tidal flexing. In other words, you take a rubber ball and squeeze it and you might get heat that way. Or you could have the original heat, or you could have radioactive heat. But none of those can account for the amount of heat coming out. The estimates I've heard, are about 1/10 can be explained by tidal flexing, up to maybe 1/3. But there's far more heat coming out of there. And so the point is that this points to youth, that Io cannot be billions of years old. In fact, if it has been going in this steady state for 4.5 billion years, it would have regurgitated its entire mass tens or hundreds of times, according to a new paper in Science that I reported on in March.
We actually have this report that you wrote about Jupiter's volcanic moon defies deep time. These photos of Io are prompting many new discussions that challenge the secular consensus of 4.5 billion years of solar system formation. In the last few seconds, tell us what should be our takeaway from all of this new data that we're getting.
Well, it's just one of many bodies in the solar system, including one of Saturn's moons, Enceladus, which is also volcanically active. And so it shows that these things cannot be billions of years old. Otherwise, it's absurd to think that they were erupting for hundreds of times their entire mass. Instead, these things point to just a few thousand years.
Absolutely. And I completely concur. Everything is pointing us right back to biblical principles. Thank you, David, so much for joining us, and thank you for joining us on the Genesis Science Report. Until next week, I want you to keep looking up. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God.